Well, a very good evening and event. I am personally delighted and excited for this particular series in our training in that this is one of my very most favorite subjects and topic. And tonight we have with us the man, the myth, the legend. You know him, you love him, ladies and gentlemen. He is himself super sponsor man, the KISS marketing guy, Claude Haggerty. And he's going to be sharing some of his super top secret. People have paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to learn this information, and you guys are getting us just because you're part of the unfair success advantage. And so we'll get started here. As a matter of fact, we might as well just get started right away. Welcome to the unfair success advantage. This is how to successfully serve the fair industry and make your magic dreams come true. And how you do that is by helping other people. You know, really, we've talked about this at great lengths. If you watched any of the other trainings, interviews, resources, tools, downloads, gifts, assets, information, you know the number one key strategy is to be really cool, right? But we want to be really cool by adding some additional value in ways that, frankly, no other fair time expert, entertainer, performer, presenter has ever exposed. As a matter of fact, the few times I've talked about it in the fair and festival industry, people come at me with pitchforks and flames and flamethrowers because they don't understand it. So if you want to up your business, your results, your outcomes, you want to up your impact in the fair and festival industry. That's right, up yours. You want to up your income. You do that simply by helping others. Now, tonight, we will only, and I said only, be sharing real, proven, powerful, profit-producing results that absolutely and unconditionally work without fail, right? Over 30,000 live paid presentations, and as you'll see by our special guest, another 25 or 30,000 all unto himself. There's a reason that I go to experts, all right? It's mentors, mentoring mentors. And that's why, selfishly, that's why I want it. So there's no guesswork, no dangerous theory, overstated hyperbole, or, opinion. This is all real proven results, right? So Claude Haggerty, the man, the myth, the legend, is going to share some of his strategies, but let's talk a little bit. Let's kiss this down. And see, he's known as the KISS marketing guy. The KISS marketing guy. KISS stands for, as you know, keep it super simple so that you can keep it super successful. We have, as a species, have a tendency to overcomplicate what is very, 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 did I say very? I meant very, very simple. And we're going to break that down for you. There's two ways to create value, pretty much. One is either you make a deposit or a withdrawal. It's that simple. Either you make a deposit or withdrawal. The goal in value-added, marketing is to simply make more deposits than withdrawals. That way your bank account, you don't go bankrupt. You don't get penalties and levies and fees for being overdrawn, right? Simply make more deposits. See, the more value you create, the more money you'll make. And of course, as you know, when we say money, yes, we mean money, but we also mean emotional, spiritual, relational, intellectual, and of course, as business owners, financial results and outcomes for ourselves and for others. Remember the VIP principles and processes. So what are some of the core key concepts that we'll be outlining is how to be easy, literally bend over backwards, help your fairs, festivals, special events get more of what they ultimately want, need, desire, and deserve by over-delivering the chocolatey goodness that you are. And by the way, just doing another trick or another balloon animal or another whatever is not necessarily the over-delivering we're talking about. We're talking about above and beyond what they're already paying you to do, right? You have to become the master of yes. And by that, I mean, and Claude will give us a lot of examples tonight about that, is that how does yes produce massive profit for the fair festival because you're serving them, as well as you and your business. Make you irresistible, make it financially irresponsible for them to say anything but yes to you and your offer and opportunity to join them at the fair festival, right? So here's the feature presentation. Here's what you joined us for in this particular training, right? And that is the man, the myth, the legend, Claude Haggerty. And Claude, do me a favor, if you would. Claude's standing by. He is, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what qualifies you to share anything at all about sponsorships.
Well, first of all, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fairs, across Canada. And one thing, because I traveled with a fairly large show at one time, I was using lions and tigers and jaguars, had a big staff. And what I found was that the fairs was really interested in my services, but they didn't quite have enough budget for the show, maybe that size or that large, or their budget might have been $2,500 a day, where I could come in and do 2 or 3 shows for $2,500 a day. But I found many times the fairs needed things that they didn't even know that they needed. For example, one of the things I offer the fairs is, what if I could help to do my own promotions that I'm going to be here, if I took up my own radio ads, or if I did a publicity stunt leading up to the fair, or if I was able to go out to the community and do some mini shows and drive traffic back to the fair, would that be of interest to them? And they're like, of course that would be of interest to them, over and above, the 2 or 3 half-hour shows daily. Or what if I could not only do the 3 shows that you're asking me for, but what if I did something on the grandstand for 90 minutes, something grandiose that maybe would cost thousands of dollars? And what if I absorb the difference through sponsorships? So yes, I would take your $2,500, but the other $5,000 or $8,000 or $10,000, I would go out into the community, gain my own sponsors to pay for any additional services that I might create on your behalf. And they're like, where did you come from? Of course they would be interested.
Right.
And I would get the gig every single time. I would make more than just going and performing, but I would produce many more results for the fair that didn't ever cost them any more over and above their budget. So A, not one single fair ever said no, and B, I would make way more because I was delivering way more to the fair. And these little extras made all the difference in the world. Most of the fairs I played set record crowds based on my own effort to draw the traffic. And what would happen is people would come to the fairgrounds and they would be immediately looking for my stage. So if 5,000 people come to the grounds and asking, where's Dean Hankey's stage? The fair's, you're not even finished yet. They're like, can you come back next year already? Because they've never had that kind of response before. And it was all based on the extras I could create for them through marketing and promotions and doing maybe some publicity stunts, gearing up to the fair. Right.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could do us a favor. There's a big discrepancy between what people understand and what they don't understand when it comes to sponsorship or, working with partners and champions in the community to make not only good things happen, but bring you to the fair and festival, help offset some of those costs and expenses. Let me set up what we normally perceive, and we've talked about this in the Unfair Success Advantage, as traditional sponsorships. And then we'll talk about the Claude Haggerty marketing magic mojo that is micro sponsorships and amplified advertising strategies, which is, I think you'll find very useful and very different. And traditional sponsorships are obviously, your $5, $10, $15, or $150,000, traditional sponsorships, Coca-Cola or Pennies or, some major Fortune 100, Fortune 500 corporation who has the resources, or some local charitable foundation that has set aside resources for community efforts and attentions, interests, and outcomes. Would potentially sponsor at those big monies. And then that process takes potentially a long time. Rarely does a $10,000 or, $50,000 or $100,000 sponsor come in 8 to 12 short minutes. Usually you're talking about weeks, months, and sometimes even a year or more before you even get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. You'll go to a company and say, would you be interested? And they go, well, send us your stuff. Let's have a meeting. I have to run it past our board of directors. We have to run it through risk management. We have to do all of this stuff. And what will we get for it? And does it align with what we want? And so on and so forth. And usually the answer is a very small percentage of the time. I would say those kinds of big sponsors, give you a thumbs up for $10,000 to $100,000. Am I close?
But I think one of the reasons for that is because it takes so long to get sometimes a year or longer. Some of the key players would even be involved a year later. They could have moved to different positions within the company. They could have been transferred, moved on somewhere else. And I find that something that takes that long, yes, maybe you can go get a $10,000 or $20,000 sponsorship, but it takes a hell of a long time. Whereas, they get a $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 sponsor might take 15 minutes. And I could go get 10,000, 10, $1,000 sponsors way quicker than anybody could ever go get a $10,000 sponsorship.
Yep.
And if I go in and see a potential business or a group for, say, a $2,000 sponsorship, if they say no, I've wasted 20 minutes. I just move on to the next one. No harm done. Exactly. And in fact, let me tell you how quickly this works. Do you have time for a quick story here?
Yes, please do.
I remember one day I was meeting with a fair, and I was looking for about $5,000 to come and do, a half hour or a 90-minute show there. And they said, we have no dollars. And I said, just go get it sponsored. And they looked at each other and said, Mr. Haggerty, that's a great idea. But we went out to all the businesses. We knocked on all the doors. We approached every business in town. We got all the sponsors and donations that were available. So there is no sponsorship money available because we've already talked to all the business owners already. And those who were able to sponsor or donate have, and those who pass will say no to you as well. So I said, no, okay, I understand. So I left their meeting. And I got out into my car and I thought, well, I should maybe take a minute and see what I could find out. I just looked across the street and there was a little video store, a little mom and pop. It was called King Kong Video. So I walk over, introduce myself, talk to the gentleman for maybe 15 quick minutes. And he wrote me a check for $2,000 as a sponsorship towards me playing at the fair. So I just walk across the street again. I don't even get in my car. I walk back into the meeting. We're still in progress and saying, excuse me, sorry, like Columbo kind of thing. And pardon me. But I just walked across the street quickly there and they gave me a check for $2,000 should you change your mind and having me play here. And I know we can go get the other $3,000 out there somewhere, but I want to get right back to you while your meeting was still in session. That's why I'm back here in 18 minutes kind of thing. And one gentleman stood up and said, looks like we're booking this guy. And somebody else stood up and said, I don't know what's going on here because I walked over and talked to that same man about a week ago and he wrote me a check for $50. And I just said, well, you didn't ask him the way I asked him now, did you? And not only did I play there, we found the other $3,000 in sponsorship, so it didn't cost me for any money on that particular engagement. But that sponsor sponsored me for $3,000 the second year, $5,000 the third year, $5,000 the fourth year. And that was about 20 years ago. And he sponsored my show even 18 months ago again. And in fact, he was at my birthday party recently. So he still sponsors me to this day in different things that we're doing in that area. Mm-hmm. But that all came from me walking across the street, taking 17 minutes, saying, I'm at the fair. There's going to be some big crowds here, and I have a very unique way to promote your business back. Are you interested?
Right. Yep. So, and of course, the old idea is something terrible happens if you don't take action. Nothing. Right. The answer is always no if you don't ask. And and the nice thing is, hey, if they have a $500 a day budget, or if they have a $1,500 a day budget, or a $15,000 a day budget, and you need more, you say, great, thank you very much. I'd be delighted and excited to work within your budget considerations. And if you don't mind, I want to provide some extra value. And so what I'll do is I will offset those costs through community relationships, i.e. sponsors, right? And so there's a difference, as Claude pointed out, the idea of, micro sponsorships or amplified advertising, whereas you might spend months, even years getting a yes, maybe, or more likely a no. For one $10,000 check, he could spend, half a day, maybe, and go get 10 $1,000 sponsors or two $5,000 sponsors or, 4 $2,500 sponsors or whatever to make up that same difference. And there's a reason why. And I'll tell you a quick story. And when I was the executive entertainment director for our state fair here in the state of Nevada, I was on the fair board for 18 years and helped out. And I started like everybody else, like every one of you watching this, is that I was simply an act that sought to be hired.
Huh.
They hired me the first year, and I did my stuff. And then I said, how can I be of value? And got on the board, started volunteering. And then they saw I knew what I was doing, and so on and so forth. So, but one of the things was they had a sponsor they'd been, wooing, trying to build relationships with for many, 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 many years. And they were never able to get them. And so, I'm on the fair board for about 15 years at this point, and they say, well, does anybody know anybody who would want to sponsor? We've exhausted our sponsorships and we really have no majors and stuff like that. And I said, well, give me your toughest one and let me see what I can do. And come to find out, to make a long story very short, is that when I went to talk to them, the reason that they weren't happy at sponsoring them for $5,000 or $7,500, which is what they were asking for, is because they never asked them what they wanted. I simply went to them first thing is, and I said, I know you've said no to the fair for year after year after year. Can I ask you a question? What would it take to make this happen? And if we could create the perfect outcome for you, even if that's nothing, but tell me if there was a perfect outcome for you partnering with the state fair, what would that be? And they stopped dead in their tracks. They looked at each other like I had three heads, and they go, nobody's ever asked us that before. They've always just said, here's your sponsor package. You want to be gold, bronze, platinum, or whatever the package, and none of the packages they wanted. I said, well, what do you want? And they said, well, first of all, we're the power company. So we can't be seen, we can't be perceived as sponsoring a public activity when people's rates are going up on a regular basis. So our foundation, which is how they sponsor things, our foundation would be happy to sponsor you if we can do this, 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 and this. None of them had to do with all the stuff that they had promised. They said, we'll give you banner advertising, we'll put you on all the posters and flyers, and we'll put you on our television ads. And they didn't want anything that scared the bejesus out of them, right? So I just said, well, what do you want? What would make this make sense to you? What would make this happen? And they said, well, we'd like to give away these things, these little tchotchkes. We'd like to do this. And we want to support the community. We just can't be recognized. So we want to stay under the radar. We don't want to be recognized. So their foundation wrote us a $10,000 check, which is more than the fair had ever even thought to ask. And they supported them for many, many, many years until the, and all as a direct result. And by the way, this is a teachable moment. I'm not just sharing this for the sake of the story. This is what happens. How powerful, Claude, is the magic of simply asking what they want, need, desire, and ultimately deserve.
In this case, where I was talking about where I walked across the street, that's exactly what happened. And I think one of the biggest challenges for the fairs when they approach sponsors in their community is that they kind of intertwine the two words sponsorship and donation, the donation sponsorship. To me, they are not one and the same. Right. But many times the fairs and people approaching sponsors kind of use them interchangeably. To me, a donation is where I give you money as a donation and I get nothing in return. I donate that money to the fair. So here's $50 towards whatever you're doing because there's nothing in it for them. Right. Whereas we look at it saying, we want to give you 2 to 10 times your return on investment. So if you give me $2,000, I want to give you $20,000 worth of results or PR or whatever you need so that you could not even think about turning this down. Right. And that's what happened in this case. For example, I said to this gentleman at the fair, I said, look, what is your biggest challenge? And he said, I'm a video store. And back then they had the memberships and when you would go in and get your CDs and, take them back and 3 days later kind of thing. And he said, there's 2 things I want. A, I want more memberships. B, my weekends are very, very busy, but my Tuesdays and my Thursdays are very, very slow. So I want to increase my memberships to my video store. And I want to dramatically increase my traffic in my stores on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He said, if you can find a way to make that happen, I would love to sponsor you. And I would cop up a couple $1,000. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay. I said, and I just saying, what if? So I ran him an idea. What if we did an idea? Anybody who came to the show to see me at the fair would get 5 free movies at your movies station there. And he said, well, are you crazy? If 1,000 people come and all want 5 movies each, that would be 5,000 movies. I don't even have that kind of inventory. I'm like, no, what if we did it this way? When they when they come to your store, you give them 5 movie passes. You can get a movie on Tuesday. It has to be brought back on Thursday, which you'll get a second movie. You bring it back on Tuesday. You'll get your 3rd movie. You come on Thursday. You bring it back. You get your 4th movie. You come back on Tuesday. You get your 5th movie. You get one each time on a Tuesday or Thursday. You bring it back, pick up another movie. I said, what that will do, that will condition people for the next 2 or 3 weeks that they're coming to your video store every Tuesday and Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday for a 5 or 6 week period. And I said, and while they're there, what if you offered a discount on the second movie, or you've got all your popcorn and potato chips and all that kind of stuff at the counter and all your other goodies? And he said, that works. He said, I'll do that. So he wrote me a check for $2,000.
Right.
Sure. And then what happened, he generated so much interest on his Tuesdays and Thursdays become his most profitable days. And the 3rd year I was at the fair, not only did he sponsor me for $5,000, he also brought in a $5,000 tent over and above the $5,000 check he wrote, just to be part of it the 3rd and 4th year in a row. So it obviously produced great results because the 2nd and 3rd year cost him almost $10,000.
Right. Right.
But it was based on the results of simple saying, what do you need? What can I do to make this, like, what can I offer you? Right. Yeah. And that's what he said. I was like, well, okay, let's do it like this. Right.
Yep. Now most people think that they can't do that. And, you know, whatever that is. So talk to us the difference about what I call micro sponsorship versus traditional sponsorship, where you're asking for, you know, $10,000, $100,000, I've had $150,000 sponsors who sponsor me for many, many years in a row. But they were few and far between. And then when, you know, how many of those do you need?
On the average, I would say the average sponsors I go after, you know, even though I have done many of the bigger ones, but they would be 500 to 5,000, probably 500 to 2,500 is pretty fair. A lot of $1,000 sponsorships. And I would find people like, for example, a local realtor that might be interested in getting their name out at the fair. I've even had times where I made a local realtor magically appear on my stage if the sponsorship dollars were big enough to warrant that. But that's gone a long ways, or you could get $1,000, $1,500 from a realtor. Would love to say this, gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed our show here today. And this was brought to you by Dean Hankey at Remax right here in this community, who really loves our fair and wanted me to be here. I think that many times as a performer, if you could incorporate a message of some sort, whether it be bullying or, you know, any kind of positive message or just a family fun time, and give the credit back to a local business saying that, you know, here's a bigger illusion that I normally wouldn't bring to the fair, but thanks to the generosity of King Kong Video. And what I actually did, the King Kong Video had a mascot of a big King Kong. So I actually incorporated the mascot into my show a couple times, involved them, did a big press release before the event, had all local TV and radio over the King Kong Video store. And I brought in one of my big cats, and with the King Kong gorilla, we did some things that was on the evening news. And mention again that all those who come to the fair would get 5 free movies from King Kong Video, and just mention what we were doing. And it was win-win. The fair loved it. It drew enormous crowds for the fair, and my sponsor loved it.
Right. That's very cool. And that's what I love about this, is that this is absolutely a win-win. I mean, you and I both, I know we've had conversations about this, have filled in some, you know, some tour dates, some travel dates as a direct result of this principle and process altogether. We've filled events in auditoriums and helped again. You know, you spoke earlier about, you know, providing additional value, i.e. through, you know, bringing people to the fair over and above, you know, whatever sponsorship is going on, but bringing people to the fair festival through another initiative that that not only the fairs but the sponsors love, which is, you know, working with the local area Boys and Girls Club and the schools
all the time.
Tell us a little bit about how that plays into the sponsorship and why that's a valuable resource.
It's a huge, huge, huge resource. And here's why. For example, one of the things I like to do is I offer to visit a couple local elementary schools a couple days prior to the fair and donate free of charge a assembly show that would normally cost the school, $1,000 or so. We would be willing to donate it to the school on behalf of the sponsors and the local fair. All we ask of the school, who works very closely with the fairs in the community anyways, because many times the schools, do competitions at the fair. They have the pumpkins and all that. So the fairs and the schools are normally love to help each other anyways. But I offer to go in and do a couple of elementary schools at no charge, possibly the day before, go in at free of charge. And what this does is my sponsors are not able to advertise in the schools because it's a federally protected audience. You can't go down and just promote your wares at the school, but I'm able to walk in the door, do a half hour free of charge, thanks to Domino's and Dean Hinkey at Remax and my mortgage broker over here and my other sponsor over there. And then at the fair, and so what happens is that when I leave the school, I mentioned that this is the things you're going to see at the fair. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And those families come to the fair and they'll immediately looking for my stage. Another thing I do, for example, I might offer to visit the local Boys and Girls Club or the Big Brothers organization and donate something to them a day or two, or a couple of days leading up to the fair. And again, the sponsors pay for these visits because they want to benefit these groups. But again, when I go in and do a little half-hour mini show, this creates tremendous interest for those groups and those families wanting to come to the fair to see something much bigger or different or more of it.
Right. Right.
So I'm able to serve the community. The sponsors pay for it, and it helps to draw record numbers back to the fair beyond any advertising that they could do otherwise.
Yep. And that's the nice thing about this program process is the total win. Like it's win, 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 win. Everybody wins. The champion wins. The sponsor wins because he gets exposure he wouldn't otherwise be able to have access to, whether it's through the audiences at the fair and festival, and especially at a price. Because I know for a fact, like if the fair were to say, hey, look at, we need $5,000 to $50,000, $5,000 to $50,000. Well, maybe that mom and pop Main Street business owner doesn't have those kinds of resources at first, but they do have $500 to $5,000 to sponsor the magic show, which will also appear magically at some of the local area schools, some of the local area Boys and Girls Club or Big Brothers Big Sisters organization, or at this particular gathering of people or whatever affinity group that might be over and above worth to them. And because you've asked them, what makes this make sense to you? If I can get in front of 3,000 school families, in addition to the 25,000 people at the fair festival, in addition to the Boys and Globe, and recognize that it is the goodwill and the philanthropy and the kindness of King Kong Video that it made all this happen. So there's a win-win-win. The audience gets the value and the benefit of your show because now you can afford to do the show that you wouldn't be able to work for if it was a limited budget at the fair or no budget at the fair.
Another thing too that I found that was really amazing too is that after I started with the fairs and they saw the extra value I was bringing to them,
yep.
Many of them, once I started got the wheels turning in the community where they saw I did go to the schools and I was on the media and I did do the publicity stunt or whatever I did, Many of them will automatically be able to find more money now. They said, hey, when we first talked to you, we had $2,500 on our budget, but now that we see the effort that you are putting in and, we scraped out another 500 or another 1,000 up. We found some additional resources here that we'd like to send your way too because of the tremendous value that you're creating for us. We feel that only right that we have this extra money that we send it your way, right?
Right.
I've had that happen many, many, many times based on the results that you were generating for them back, right?
Right. Right. And I know there's a lot of misnomer. We talk about traditional sponsorships, having to wait weeks, months, even years to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Tell us how long. This must be just an amazingly long process. How long does it take to get a yes or a no and actually get a check from one of your local mom and pop Main Street, champions?
12 to 15 minutes.
Right. And that's good. No. And by the way, I know for a fact that we have a tendency to get like a no. So we get those no's out of the way. So we're talking, 10, 20, 30 seconds.
Yes.
If you get a no, great. You just move on, right? So you're
Well,
not
the thing is
wasting
that I only work with the people that want to
your
work
no.
with me, right? So if you're not even interested in hearing what I got, I'm not going to twist your arm. I'm just going to move on. And
That's right.
basically what I do is I approach local businesses. Let's say, look, my name's Claude Haggerty. I'm an illusionist reporting with the fair. We're going to be working with the schools and maybe some other nonprofit groups. Like to discuss a bit of a unique cross-promotion opportunity that would benefit your business as well. I just sit down with you for 10 to 12 quick minutes, run some ideas by you. If this makes sense, we can talk further. If not, no harm done.
Right.
And if they say, look, I'm not even interested, or how much does it cost? And they start asking, so look, I just move on, right? Do you have 12 minutes to sit down? And I go on to the next. And what happens is that once they sit down with you and you show them that we are eager to give them 2 to 10 times value back opposed to what we're taking from them,
Sure.
They say this is a no-brainer. I said, what if I mention you on the newscast? Or I'm going to be on the air if I mention you on the radio, or if I, whatever, right? Or if I allowed you on my stage, or I made you appear, or I served the cause that was important to you, or I involve your mascot on my show, or I involve the fair princess, or whatever.
Right.
Whatever I need to do to make this happen, right? And like you said, many times they will throw out ideas, like the King Kong video said, wow, can you involve my mascot on the show? Hey, done. That's easy, right? That was easy.
Right.
And having this 10-foot gorilla on my, or this larger than life gorilla on my stage didn't do my show any harm either, because it made it a bigger attraction even yet. And it's helped the sponsor, helped me, helped the fair, right?
Sure. Yep. Michael says, did you say win? I think you meant win. Thank you, Michael. And also Charles says, if a fair is 3 hours away, how early do you have to go and meet with the businesses face to face? And do you have to get a specific money commitment before finding the sponsors and spending your time going into the schools? Let's start with the question one. Is it how soon do you have to start if it's a couple hours away, if your fair is or event is hours away?
I would probably do it a couple months, maybe a month or two in advance, because I like to do some advanced promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends too, because when I was touring, I was doing 400 shows a year. So many times I didn't have the luxury of planning when would be the perfect time. But if I found myself in that community, whether it be a week or a month or 2 months, I would try to knock them off while I could, go to see. And having done sponsorships my whole life, I kind of have an idea of where to look. So that definitely helps, having done this for a while, right?
Right. And that's the nice thing about this is that what are the 3 magic things you say to yourself when you're talking to a prospective champion or sponsor?
Well, there's 3 things I say to myself when I walk in the door. And I say these 3 things on every meeting before I walk in. And it's 3 things I say to myself, and it helps me tremendously. And number 1 is I will not prejudge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 2, I will not prejudge. And number 3, I will not prejudge, right? I've had so many times where I went up to a business and I thought, they're too small, they couldn't afford it, maybe the building was dilapidated or whatever. And I started thinking of all the reasons why they probably wouldn't do it. I looked at King Kong video. They're too small. They've probably already been approached anyway, since they're right across the street from the fair. Maybe he wouldn't be there anyways. The fair already said no, they couldn't afford it, right? So you think of reasons why you shouldn't go in there. I went and asked a question and got a check for $2,000 and secured a $5,000 fair gig.
Yep.
Right. And then played for that fair many years later, and then went back and did arena shows and other types of events where my sponsor kept supporting me each and every year, 20 years later.
Right. Exactly. So the second part of that question, do you have a money commitment before finding the sponsors and spending your time going into the schools?
No, not really, because I know the sponsors are going to come. I know if I approach them, they will do this, because sponsors are looking for opportunity now. Yep. At one time, they used to put their ads in the paper, and that's not existent now. Many of the mom and pop shops can't afford radio or TV advertising. Many of them, don't know how to do the social media thing. So many of them are looking for opportunities to grow their business. I also find that many businesses want to see their fair succeed, because I mean, in many towns here in Canada, the fairs are losing money. Many of them, they're getting less and less attendance out. They're working harder and getting volunteers and that. So many of them want to see their fair survive because many businesses benefit from that fair.
Sure.
People coming into town, if you're a motel, gas station, auto business, motels, you know, all these businesses would benefit from the fair because it brings people to the city. You know, maybe you might have a little community with 15,000 people, but you might have 18 or 20,000 there when the fair's in town, right?
Right.
So, you know, they want to be part of it. They want to see the fair succeed, but they also, being business owners, well, I think it's something for them too. If they're going to fork out a couple grand, they what's in it for them, right?
Yep. And what about the big hiccup in the get along that that some seem to think is a problem? You know, obviously it's summer, schools are out. There's no schools as far as they're concerned. What do you do then? You know,
there's other ways I've done this.
Mm-hmm.
For example, one of the ways I've done this is for the fairs are in July or August. Many times I visit to the school the last couple of weeks in June. Leading up to the fair, even though the fair is 6 weeks away, it would be my perfect market. I mean, I would prefer to have it in the same week, but since the fair is in August and there's no fairs in session, many times I've done this schools in July, in June or July, and say, look, you know, you might forget about this now, but when you see the ads coming out about the magic show, remember I was here and come say hi at the stage, and you're going to see this, and this. Right. And 6 weeks later, we go and do the fair, and thousands of kids come to my stage saying, I saw you at my school, or you were at the Boys and Girls Club. They remember, right?
Yep.
And it just helps to lead up that much more that you're coming. I've always done my own posters, even though I was on the fair poster. I've always had my own posters, which I got sponsored by local print shops. I've always done my own advertising over and above what the fair does. So I would go to the radio station on my own. I would go to the TV station on my own. I would create these mini events leading up to the fair on my own, leading up to the over and above whatever the fair did.
Yeah. But promoting the fair, so they're not frustrated by it. Matter of fact, they're excited by the additional attention and media and marketing and your efforts, and it's not costing them anything.
That's right. That's right.
They're making money.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, and also think about it like this. You know, obviously, even let's say I'm already on tour. Or it's too far out of town. I'm not going to go out 6 weeks ahead of time and do it. You know, what's to stop me? Which, by the way, I do all the time. To stop me hiring another local area performer to go to the school on behalf of the fair and these sponsors, fulfilling the obligation, reaching out to these 3,000 to 10,000 school families.
I do it all the time.
Making those appearances, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be you right? Does the show. Many times I've had other magicians work with my magic show, and I would pay them a good day's wage to go to the fair the day in advance.
Right.
Put them up in a nice hotel with a jacuzzi tub, which would be sponsored anyways, and they would go and do the schools leading up to the fair on my behalf. I mean, many times I did them on my own, but many times I send someone there to do it on my behalf.
Exactly. And, you know, and obviously it's offset by those expenses. You know, if you're making $10,000 and it even costs you $1,000, spend 10% on fulfilling the obligation without having to do the show. Now I'm not saying that's the only strategy. I prefer to do the shows because frankly, I got in this business because I love doing what I love to do. Right. And so do you. And but if I can't, hey, there's lots of choices. Lots of choices. And again, as long as you're appropriately promoting and serving the fair and festival special event, as well as your champions, your sponsors, it's a win-win. And you get to pour more money back in the local economy through that performer or presenter or performers and presenters, whatever that may be. So everybody wins. There's no downside. And the worst, most evil, obnoxious possible outcome is no, right? Nobody dies. Nobody gets pregnant. No. Okay. Thank you.
See, one of the good things about going after sponsors for festivals and fairs is that you already have a built-in audience. Right. Whereas when I go to town and I'm doing an arena show my own, like the sponsors are saying, I hope you can put 2,000 people in that arena, like you say you can, or, I still have to generate the traffic to the venue. But one thing about the fairs or festivals, they already have a built-in audience. So you could say like last year, there were 62,000 people at the fair. With your help, I hope they help the fair to increase at the 85,000 this year. Right. But last year there were 65,000 people there. So the worst that could happen is I would expose your message to those 65,000 people at the fair, right?
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about this whole thing is obviously on multiple levels is that, you're helping everybody. You're helping the schools out by giving low cost to no cost inspirational assembly programs. You're helping the fair and festival out by promoting them sometimes well in advance. You're helping a local performer. You're helping business owners reach out to an area of the community through the fair festival, through the schools, groups, and organizations, and so on. And everybody's winning. Everybody's winning. So it's a no lose proposition and situation. This is a great way to make massive money doing what you absolutely love on command and demand, literally anytime you want, just by what? Being a little bit others oriented, right? We call it OS2, others oriented success solutions, simply helping people get what they want, need, desire, and deserve. I know we could go on for hours and hours and hours. Did I say hours? I meant hours, right? Thank you. You're welcome, Michael. And the idea is that obviously just help people, right? How many times have you used sponsorships to fill in some of your tour and travel dates, right? You were able to
All
call
of them.
festivals you weren't even booked at, but you had a 5-day layover and they happened to be right on your way from this one fair to this other fair, and they were 2 days away. So now this fair was 1 day away and you could actually make a 2-day appearance at that fair. They didn't know budget because they've already spent all their money, but you go out and get a couple of champions. How does that work for you, Claude?
I do it all the time, especially because I traveled with, when I performed and I toured, I didn't tour on my own. I had a big staff and truck, so my overhead was huge. So down days were quite costly for me. A day sitting on the road could cost me $1,500 on payroll just to sit there.
Right.
So I would obviously fill in those holes by, again, going after community champions. It could be a local restaurant, a local auto dealer, a mortgage broker, to say, hey, I'm passing through this area. I'm on my way to the fair over here, which is Friday night. This is Wednesday night. And maybe I would partner with a nonprofit group or get a couple local sponsors and make some magic happen. And many times what we're able to do, we were able to leverage the fair itself. So we could set up, for example, a show that could be the day after the fair. You could be in that community or just slightly on the outskirts, maybe a half hour away kind of thing, where we would use the fair to say, folks, I hope you had a great time at the fair, but tomorrow night or Monday night, we're going to be over here serving this cause, and we're going to do this, this, and this that we didn't even do here outside or at that venue or whatever, something a little different. And it's all in support of a local cause or some group or whatever it was, right?
Yep. One of our favorite fair time unfair success advantage strategies is leveraging the crowds and of your paid performances at the fair and festival to do whether a fundraiser or a separate show on the last night of the fair, either in that same venue or at another venue nearby. And again, win-win-win. The fair festival got your full faith and credit and got your best stuff you wouldn't be able to afford to do at their, maybe even at their regular rate and whatnot. So again, it becomes financially irresponsible when you partner in this way for anybody to say no, because everybody gets the win they want because you've asked them what they wanted. Hey, if we could make this happen, you're talking to the fair and festival. What would be interesting? Well, we only have $2,500 a day or $2,500, whatever. And you say, well, good. If I can make up the difference, I need 5,000 a day. So great. Here's how we'll do it. Do you mind if I bring in and just tell me who not to talk to, who you already talked to?
See, that's one of the things that's a good point. That's one thing I've always did with the fair is say, they were a little nervous about you going after their pet sponsors. Hey, give me a list of your pet sponsors. Right. I won't contact them in any way, shape or form, but anybody else on the list is for a game. And here's another good thing too, that's a benefit to the fair. Right. I've had many times where I've been at the fair where I brought in some pretty major sponsors, right? And then next year they could have another act, or maybe I was not available. I mean, here there's only 8 or 10 weeks. So we have, in Canada, we probably have 400 fairs all over 10 different weeks, right? At any given time, there could be 40 major fairs going on here, right? So, there's a lot of acts a lot of places that can't get you or whatever. So many times what I've done is I went to some of these fairs and say, look, your fair is in August or September, and I know that you struggle maybe getting the acts and that. What if we did a little fundraising event for you February, March, or April, as a fundraiser for the fair board. So that any profits we make could be used to better run your fair. Man, they're all over that. So that created another opportunity for myself. I got that sponsored as well. And once I did just shows for them in January, February, March, as a bit of a fundraiser for the Agriculture Society, every single time I've done that, they're like, wow, can you just come and do the fair too? Right?
Right. Exactly.
Sure.
But again, may just make it, I mean, it's not uncommon for us to offer to do their volunteer VIP event, the last night of the fair or the day after the fair, depending on our routing and whatnot. I mean, we'd be as flexible as we can, obviously. Or saying, hey, if there's a key champion that you've worked with over the last many years and they've gone above and beyond for you and you really want to thank them, hey, feel free to include them. And we will be happy to include them in our our efforts as we go out to the school and say, hey, thanks to, the local Ford dealership, and they've supported the fair for the last 10 years. And we want to thank them for, in addition to these other fine champions and sponsors, community areas. So again, the whole goal, as we've said from the very get-go, is this whole VIP, add value that generates impact, that produces profit for others. And one great way to do that, like you said, is through sponsorships. And I'm so delighted and excited to have not only as my friend, as a mentor, and as a an expert in this industry who understands it, not based on theory or guesswork, but based on real road-tested result, getting rubber meets the road results in his fair, and also in the people that he's helped and shared these principles and processes with. So any other thoughts there, Brother Claude?
Just go talk to people. I mean, they're interested in making the fair happen, but get out and just go in and say, look, I'm looking at doing the fair. I thought maybe I would talk to you about a bit of a sponsorship or cross-promotion opportunity. Right. And could I sit with you for 10 minutes, run some ideas by you? Right. And just go out and find as many ways as you can to give them value at the fair. Right. Yep. And here's another idea too, okay, quickly too. Many times I find that one of the sponsors might even be some of the vendors that are already at the fair, like who's got this fry truck or the hot dog station or the guy selling the ribs or some other booth. I've had lots of times where some of these businesses have spent, they've taken a major spot at the vendor booth where they've taken 3 or 4 booths. Some of these vendors might spend $5,000 on their booth. So if you went there and said, look, I noticed you're a big player at the fair. What if I was to mention your booth at every one of my shows or talk about what you do or give away a product sample? Mm-hmm. I've even had times where I went to the fair and said, look, I got you a $5,000 sponsor, but what I want you to do, I want you to arrange that vendor's location to be right in the line of sight of my stage. I can actually point to their booth and send people to their booth. And if you can do that, they're in for $5,000. And the fair would say, sure, we can make that happen. Right. So now the vendor might get a better spot closer to the stage, traffic, so I can immediately send traffic. Maybe it's Pizza or whoever. I can say, folks, sure, show's over. Pizza is going to go over there and they're going to give you a discount on pizza or a free drink or whatever the deal would be. And you would do the show and people would line right over to your sponsors and their cash registers would ring for the next hour. And right, they're looking to sponsor you again for next year, right?
Yep. And again, it's about creating value. So it's not difficult. So let me ask you one little closing question, because I know everybody will be thinking this, is that, well, he's been doing it for 40 years and he's raised millions of dollars in sponsorships from, a couple hundred to a couple of thousand on a regular basis. And, he just knows how to do it. How important is that? Do you have some super secret marketing magic mojo language or script or things that you can share with the audience, or that you use, or you just go talk to people? How does that work for you?
Well, those who know me well, my friends who know me well, know that I stuttered most of my life. Mm-hmm. So walking into a business, approaching them with an opportunity was definitely not my first thought of action because I stuttered so much. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely out of my comfort zone. Right. But I also knew that these businesses were looking for opportunities to support the fair and their business. And I knew, and I once found out that you don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be slick. I just go in and I stutter my way through it. And I apologize in advance. I do stutter, so I do apologize for that. but I'm working with the fair. I know they're struggling over the years with diminished crowds. I'd like to help them change that. With your help, we can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to sit with you for a couple quick minutes, run some ideas by you, and if it makes sense, we'll do something. If not, then no harm done.
Right.
They're like, sure, that's no pressure, right?
Right. Easy. I love it. I love it. And again, this is, I mean, literally he's giving you the word for word languaging. If you just replay this video and if you want, write it down. But more importantly, just go talk to people. I've never had a script formula. I mean, in our trainings, we offer, word script training formulas as part of another one of our training programs, but it's not necessary. What do we tell them to do? Immediately after we train them on every word to say, we tell them what?
Forget the script, just go talk to people.
Yep. Just go have conversations with people. Help people get more of what they want, need, desire, and deserve, and be done with it. Some will want the help and some won't. Big deal. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting next. Help people, work with people who want to work with you. It really isn't that difficult. Some people will see the value in it. And, they're already spending hard-earned marketing dollars in advertising in wasted spaces like, other traditional medias, and getting nothing in return. This way you can at least provide a little value for them for about the same or maybe even less than what they're spending on just 1 week in a traditional advertising vehicle. Pretty easy.
I'll throw another little tip out there in closing here. One is that it's not always the very, very big sponsor that you're looking for. Many times it's the people that are further down the food chain. Mm-hmm. For example, if you were a realtor, and I might come to you and say, Mr. Henke, I understand that you're relatively new in the real estate profession. Isn't it hard for you? You must find it challenging to compete with others here in the city where they have, you got your name on a park bench, but they got their name on all the billboards. You take you got your little lawn signs up, but they got their name on all your competition has a name on the side of a bus, right? Sure. Hard to compete with those folks. But what if I offered you an opportunity where the other guys can have it, where you would be the only one? Yep. Would that be of interest to you? Yep. Working with the fair, expecting, 2,000 or 8,000 or 15,000 people to pass through there. What if I could offer you an opportunity that the big boys can't get? Would you have 10 minutes for me to run an idea by you?
Yep.
Or, I might approach another guy and say, look, I've seen your billboards everywhere. I thought you'd be the first go-to guy, right? Either way, but you're the big guy, I come to you, or you're the little guy, and that's why I come to you. But either way, you're going to be the only one if you say yes, right?
Yep. I promise you, if you want a lead directory, just look anywhere that people are advertising. All those people are spending money in newspapers, magazines, radio, television, park and bus benches, taxi tops, and all those people. They're already spending money. They know what it means to invest into their business. And so, hey, go to those. Those are usually the mom and pop Main Street business owners who never otherwise, because when as a fair executive, we always thought of, hey, it was the big bottler, the big distillery, or the big, grocery store chain, or the big. Never did we think of the mom and pop Main Street business owners. And frankly, those are the folks that need our help the most and are most likely, because they know they don't have the unfair advantage because against the big box retailers and so on and so forth have the mighty marketing dollar, where you give them, you basically are leveling out the playing field from, big box retailers to mom and pop Main Street business owners who would jump on the opportunity for $500 to $5,000, what would otherwise cost them, $5,000 to $50,000 if you were a big box retailer. So
see, the other thing is with the fair, you'll find that the newspaper is very generous because they want to see the fair succeed. The local radio station, TV, any of the media. I mean, they all have a vested interest in the fair, the community, because many of those fairs have been there for 100 years or so. So many times, again, when you go to the radio station and ask if you could do an interview, they love to have you on, and you could thank your sponsors beforehand or promote what you're doing and what your show times are or the importance of the fair, or, and many times what the other thing I've done that the fair has really appreciated it. When I had been on the air, not only did I promote my own show, I promoted all the other acts they had too. So I promoted all the other entertainers they had,
Of course.
over and above my show even.
Yep.
So that was a
So-
biggie for them to get like, wow, where'd you come from, right?
Right. Exactly. So obviously, this is the unfair success advantage, and this is just one of many ways, and that's leveraging your skills, talents, abilities, doing what you absolutely love, making massive money, doing what you love, by helping other people get more, once again, of what they want, need, desire, and deserve. So what a great way to be of value. Claude, thank you so much for sharing your multi-million-dollar range of experience and insights, 40 years, tens of thousands of shows, and an experience that is absolutely unparalleled, and in such a way that helps people to get more of what they want, need, desire, and ultimately deserve, which is such a blessing that you can fill in some of your fair schedule and some of your fair income as a direct result, even as simple as getting people on board for some of your road expenses. How many times have you been sponsored for all your food and accommodations and basic road needs, right?
All the time.
That's right.
All the time. I always get them sponsored. Why would you pay for those, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, well, I appreciate you, Dean Hankey, here for the Unfair Success Advantage. Claude, my brother, I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing. And most important, thanks for, just spending time and reinvesting into this community of performers and presenters. I appreciate you.
The fairs, I love this market, and I'm glad that I was able to come here and serve your group here, Dean.
Right.
So thank you for the invite.
Great. All right, get out there. Remember, something terrible happens, gang, if you don't take action. Nothing. So do yourself a favor, do your business a favor, get more business, make more money, and serve more people, not necessarily in that order.